12-year-old Zaria Jackson stands alone on a dusty road in the scorching Arizona heat, frantically waving at approaching cyclists in bright uniforms. The lead rider, Marcus Reynolds, a celebrated white endurance athlete, signals his team to stop. Zaria speaks 4 words that will change everything. "Your bikes are sabotaged." The cyclists laugh dismissively until Marcus notices something unusual about his brake line. Within hours, 3 racers will be hospitalized, 1 man will disappear, and Zaria will become both a hero and a target in a town built on secrets. The morning sun blazed mercilessly over Copper Canyon, Arizona, a town where wealth and poverty existed in stark separation. In the modest Eastern District, 12-year-old Zaria Jackson helped her grandmother Eleonora in their small garden, carefully harvesting herbs before the day grew too hot. "Remember to get extra sage today," Eleonora reminded her, arthritis making her dark hands tremble slightly as she sorted through yesterday's pickings. "Mrs. Castillo needs it for her baby's cough." Zaria nodded, her bright eyes serious beneath her cloud of natural hair. The Jackson women were known throughout the Black and Latino communities of Copper Canyon as healers, keepers of traditional remedies passed down through generations since her ancestors had been brought to this unforgiving landscape. Their small wooden house, though weathered by desert winds and economic hardship, stood as a beacon of hope for those who couldn't afford the medical center on the affluent west side. Zaria grabbed her collection basket and water bottle, kissing her grandmother's cheek before heading toward the hills where the wild herbs grew most abundantly. The town buzzed with unusual activity as the annual Endurance Challenge preparations reached their peak. Wealthy cyclists from across the country descended on Copper Canyon each year, bringing a brief economic surge that barely trickled down to families like the Jacksons. Roads that normally received no maintenance suddenly found themselves repaved, and police who rarely ventured into the Eastern District were now visible on every corner, ensuring the town appeared prosperous and welcoming to visitors. Zaria took her usual shortcut past Rodriguez Auto Shop, where the best herbs grew behind the building near the abandoned equipment. As she approached, voices carried through the open back door, making her pause. "Did you finish with those bikes?" a gruff voice asked. "Every single one the team registered," came the reply, followed by rough laughter. "Those fancy outsiders won't know what hit them when they hit that first big descent. Brakes'll hold just long enough to get them up to speed, then snap." Hydraulic lines got microscopic cuts, reinforced with clear adhesive that'll rupture under pressure. Zaria froze, her heart pounding. "Walsh is paying top dollar to make sure nobody finishes this race," the first voice continued. "Especially not that hotshot Reynolds and his diverse little dream team." The contempt in the man's voice when he said diverse made Zaria's skin crawl. She knew about Marcus Reynolds from the posters all over town and the excited chatter at school. He was famous not just for winning races, but for creating opportunities for cyclists of all backgrounds in a predominantly white sport. After what happened to his boy, the second voice added, "Walsh wants them all to pay. Says minorities got no business taking over his race." Zaria backed away silently, nearly tripping over a rusted carburetor. Her mind raced faster than her feet as she ran home, herbs forgotten. When she burst through the door, Eleonora took one look at her face and set aside her work. "Child, what happened?" Zaria spilled everything she'd overheard, words tumbling over each other. Eleonora's expression darkened with each detail. When Zaria finished by declaring she needed to warn the cyclists, her grandmother gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "You will do no such thing," she said firmly. "This isn't our business. Getting involved in white folks' quarrels has never ended well for our family." "But people could die, Grandma," Zaria protested. "What about all your teachings about responsibility to community?" Eleonora's eyes grew distant, clouded with memories Zaria couldn't access. "Our community is here, in the Eastern District. Those wealthy athletes have their own people to look out for them." But Zaria couldn't let it go. After her grandmother fell asleep that night, she slipped out of the house with a flashlight. Her friend Miguel's older brother worked security at the hotel where the cyclists stayed, and he sometimes let neighborhood kids sneak onto the property to watch the pool at night. Instead of heading for the pool, Zaria made her way to the massive garage where team vehicles and equipment were stored. Using the small access door Miguel had shown her once, she slipped inside. The garage was eerily quiet, filled with expensive bikes that gleamed under the emergency lights. Zaria had never seen so much costly equipment in one place. She found the section marked with the Velocity 6 team logo and carefully examined the bikes, though she knew little about their mechanics. On a workbench nearby lay team registration forms and maintenance schedules. As she flipped through the papers, looking for anything that might help her understand what she'd overheard, a folder labeled Walsh Industries caught her attention. Inside were letters on company letterhead, detailing sponsorship withdrawals and thinly veiled threats about maintaining the traditional character of the endurance challenge. One document made her blood run cold, a memorandum mentioning compensation for unfortunate incidents during the race, with higher figures for permanent incapacitation. Attached was a photo of a young white man in cycling gear, labeled Clayton Jr., 2021. Zaria quickly snapped photos of the documents with her phone before carefully replacing everything. As she turned to leave, the sound of approaching voices sent her diving behind a storage cabinet. Through a narrow gap, she watched two security guards making their rounds, followed by an older white man in an expensive suit. "Everything needs to appear absolutely normal," the man was saying. "The inspections tomorrow are just a formality. Nobody looks too closely at individual components." Even in profile, Zaria recognized him from the large portrait hanging in the town hall. Clayton Walsh Sr., the most powerful man in Copper Canyon, and owner of the mining operations that had employed and exploited generations of residents. The man who, according to what she'd overheard, had ordered the sabotage of bikes belonging to people whose only crime was their race and success. In that moment, Zaria knew two things with absolute certainty. First, that despite her grandmother's warnings, she had to prevent what was about to happen. And second, that by opposing Clayton Walsh, she was putting herself in grave danger. But she thought of her parents, whose faces grew dimmer in her memory with each passing year since the accident that claimed their lives, and she knew what they would expect of their daughter. She would find a way to warn the cyclists before the race began. Marcus Reynolds wiped sweat from his forehead as he led the Velocity 6 through their morning training ride. At 37, he still maintained the lean physique and focused intensity that had earned him 5 national championships and 2 world titles. "Let's take it easy today," he called back to his team. "Save your legs for tomorrow." Behind him rode 5 elite athletes he'd personally recruited to challenge the sport's lack of diversity. Derek Washington, a powerhouse sprinter from Chicago; Sophia Chen, former tech executive turned cycling strategist; brothers Jamal and Aiden Harper, climbing specialists from Atlanta; and Victor Morales, their newest member with impressive endurance credentials. The team had faced resistance from traditional cycling circles, sponsors had withdrawn under mysterious circumstances, and online forums filled with vitriol about quotas and real athletes. But their results spoke for themselves: 4 major victories this season alone. As they rounded the final turn back toward Copper Canyon, the sight of a small figure waving frantically in the road caused Marcus to signal a stop. The child couldn't have been more than 12. Her dark skin glistening with perspiration in the morning heat, determination etched on her young face. "Your bikes are sabotaged," she blurted, eyes darting nervously to the town beyond. Derek laughed first, others joining in. "Kid, these are professional racing machines," he said kindly. "We have mechanics who check everything." Marcus, however, noticed the girl's unwavering gaze. Something about her certainty gave him pause. "What makes you say that?" he asked, dismounting. "The girl Zaria," she said. Her name was spoke quickly about overheard conversations, about microscopic cuts in hydraulic lines designed to fail catastrophically during high-speed descents. When she mentioned Clayton Walsh, Marcus felt a chill despite the desert heat. Walsh, whose son had died during this very race 3 years ago. Walsh, who had publicly criticized the changing face of cycling when Marcus had announced his diverse team. "Show me," Marcus said, wheeling his bike toward her. The others exchanged skeptical glances but followed. Using his repair kit magnifier, Marcus examined his brake lines carefully. At first he saw nothing, but when Zaria pointed to a specific section, he noticed an almost invisible seam reinforced with clear adhesive. "Sophia," he called, his voice tight. "Check yours." The former tech executive's methodical inspection confirmed the same tampering. Within 20 minutes, they'd verified that all 6 bikes showed identical, sophisticated sabotage, not the work of amateurs, but professionals with access to their equipment. "This would have failed during the canyon descent," Sophia stated flatly. 40 miles per hour minimum on that section, without brakes. She didn't need to finish. "You saved our lives," Marcus told Zarya, who shifted uncomfortably. "Someone should call the police." "Sheriff Tanner is Walsh's cousin by marriage," Zarya said. "He won't help you." Despite her warning, Marcus insisted on reporting the incident. 2 hours later, in the lobby of their hotel, Sheriff Tanner dismissed their concerns with practiced ease. No evidence of tampering, he declared, though the team's own mechanic had verified the sabotage. "Probably just manufacturing defects you never noticed before. Or maybe," he added with a pointed look at Zarya, "the colored girl made it all up for attention." When Marcus protested, the sheriff's hand moved deliberately to rest on his holstered weapon. "We don't appreciate outsiders bringing big city problems to our peaceful community, Mr. Reynolds, especially not certain kinds of outsiders." After the sheriff departed, the team retreated to their suite to reassess. "We should withdraw," Jamal argued. "This is too dangerous." "That's exactly what they want," Derek countered, "to scare off the team that doesn't belong here." While the debate continued, Marcus slipped away to find Zarya. The address she'd provided led him to a modest house on the eastern edge of town, far from the wealthy neighborhoods surrounding the racecourse. An elderly woman opened the door, her suspicious gaze softening slightly when Zarya appeared behind her. "You shouldn't be here," the girl said, though she stepped outside to speak with him. "Thank you," Marcus began. "We confirmed the sabotage on all our bikes. You saved us from serious injury, maybe worse." Zarya nodded solemnly. "They'll try again. Walsh doesn't give up when he wants something. Why would he target us specifically?" Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer. "His son died in this race," Zarya replied. "But that's not why. He hates what your team represents. Change, equality, the end of his kind running everything." Her directness startled him. "You seem to know a lot about local politics for someone your age." A shadow passed over her face. "My parents taught me to pay attention, before they died." The door opened wider, and Eleonora's stern voice called out, "That's enough, child. Come inside." Before complying, Zarya whispered, "Be careful who you trust, even on your team." As Marcus turned to leave, Eleonora's voice stopped him. "Last time a black child tried helping white folks in this town, we had to bury him." The door closed firmly, leaving Marcus standing alone in the growing twilight. When he returned to the hotel, he found the team had reached a decision. "We're racing," Sophia announced, "with replacement bikes being flown in tonight. New equipment they couldn't have accessed." As they finalized security arrangements for their gear, a rock shattered the suite's window. Wrapped around it was a note with 5 words, "Go home, or go home dead." Later that night, after the team had finally settled, Marcus was awakened by his phone vibrating. A message from an unknown number showed a single image, the Jacksons' front window shattered by what appeared to be bullet holes, with a piece of paper visible among the broken glass. The message text read only, "Mind your business or join your parents." The next morning dawned with an atmosphere of nervous anticipation. Race officials had denied the Velocity 6 team's request for additional security measures and a 24-hour postponement. "No evidence of criminal activity," the race director stated, though he couldn't quite meet Marcus's eyes. "The Copper Canyon Endurance Challenge has a perfect safety record." A quick background check by Sophia revealed the director had received substantial donations from Walsh Industries over the years. With no official support, the team implemented their own precautions. Their replacement bikes arrived at 4 in the morning and remained under constant surveillance. They prepared their own food and water, trusting nothing provided by local vendors. When Marcus tried contacting Zarya to ensure her safety, his calls went unanswered. The first stage of the race, a 70-mile loop through the desert foothills, began at noon. Camera crews from regional sports networks positioned themselves at key points along the route, though Marcus noticed none were stationed at the technical sections where accidents would be most likely to occur. The Velocity 6 maintained a tight formation, watching not just for the usual race hazards, but potential sabotage. 30 miles in, during a brief water break, Zaria appeared suddenly from behind a rocky outcropping. "They're watching the bikes now," she said urgently, "but they have other plans." Before Marcus could question her further, she thrust a worn leather journal into his hands. "My father's. Read it when you're safe." Then she vanished back into the landscape as quickly as she had appeared. Marcus secured the journal in his jersey pocket, unsettled by the encounter. As the team remounted, Derek swayed slightly, blinking rapidly. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "Just dizzy for a second," Derek replied. "Probably the heat." They continued, maintaining their position near the front of the pack. 5 miles later, approaching a technical descent, Derek suddenly slumped forward on his bike. His front wheel turned sharply, sending him crashing into a roadside boulder. The impact was sickening. Medical staff reached him within minutes, but the damage was severe: a broken collarbone, 3 cracked ribs, and a concussion. As they loaded Derek into the ambulance, Marcus noticed something odd about his teammate's water bottle. Rather than the sealed containers they'd prepared that morning, this one had a barely perceptible puncture mark near the cap. At the hospital, while Derek underwent treatment, a young Hispanic orderly approached Marcus cautiously. "They rushed the blood work," he whispered. "Found something strange. A compound that causes gradual loss of consciousness, not detectable unless you're looking for it." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "Security cameras caught someone in your team area early this morning. Someone with access." Before Marcus could ask more, a security guard appeared. "Orderly Martinez, you're needed in administration." The young man's face drained of color, but he hurried away. An hour later, when Marcus inquired about him, a nurse informed him that Martinez had been terminated for violation of patient confidentiality protocols. That evening, the remaining members of Velocity 6 gathered in Marcus's room, security sweeps having confirmed it was free of listening devices. "Someone drugged Derek's water," Marcus stated flatly. "Someone with access to our secure area." The implication hung heavily in the air. "You think one of us is working for Walsh?" Aiden demanded, outraged. "I think we need to be careful," Marcus replied. "Trust nothing we haven't personally verified." He pulled out the journal Zaria had given him, its pages filled with meticulous notes and calculations. Her father was an environmental engineer, he explained as they examined the contents. 4 years ago, he was conducting tests on groundwater near Walsh's mining operations. According to these notes, he found dangerous levels of toxic metals leaching into the water supply, specifically in areas predominantly populated by Black and Hispanic residents. "Let me guess," Sophia said grimly. "He died before he could report it." Marcus nodded. "Car accident. Both parents. No witnesses." "The girl thinks it was murder," Jamal stated. "It wasn't a question. And now she's risking the same fate to help us," Marcus confirmed. "The question is why? What's the connection between her parents' deaths, Walsh's vendetta against our team, and sabotaged racing bikes?" Victor, who had remained largely silent, finally spoke up. "Maybe there isn't one. Maybe we're connecting dots that don't belong together." His tone was reasonable, but something about his carefully neutral expression made Marcus uneasy. Either way, Marcus decided, we need to understand what we're dealing with. "Sophia, can you dig deeper into Walsh Industries?" Jamal and Aiden, review race footage from previous years, especially any incidents involving minorities. Victor, he hesitated. Rest up for tomorrow's stage. As the team dispersed, Marcus stayed behind, continuing to examine the journal. Among the technical data and environmental analyses, he found a personal entry that chilled him. Walsh threatened the children today. Said accidents happen to curious kids. Eleanor taking Z to her sister in Phoenix until this blows over, uploading all data to secure server tonight. If anything happens to me, access code is Zaria's birthday plus Eleanor's house number. Marcus realized with growing horror that they'd stumbled into something far beyond racing sabotage, a conspiracy of environmental racism, corporate corruption, and murder that had claimed lives before, and would certainly claim more if exposed. He understood now why young Zarya had risked everything to approach them. As outsiders with media attention, they represented perhaps the only chance to bring attention to the truth before it was buried forever beneath Copper Canyon's harsh landscape. The hallways of Copper Canyon Middle School fell silent as Zarya walked to her locker the following morning. Friends who had chatted easily with her for years now averted their eyes or moved to the opposite side of the corridor. Her first-period teacher, Mrs. Harrington, who had previously praised Zarya's work, now scrutinized her assignments with unprecedented rigor, finding fault with even the most minor details. "Your essay lacks sufficient citations," she announced loudly, returning Zarya's paper marked with a glaring C-. "Perhaps you're too distracted by extracurricular activities to focus on academics." During lunch, Zarya sat alone until Miguel Rodriguez cautiously joined her. "Everyone's saying you're making trouble with the big race," he whispered. "Dad says Walsh's people came to our shop asking questions about you." Zarya's stomach tightened. "What did your dad tell them?" "Nothing," Miguel assured her. "But he says we should be careful. Those men weren't local, they had the kind of suits you only see on TV." He pushed his pudding cup toward her in a gesture of solidarity. "Whatever you're doing, just watch yourself, okay?" By afternoon, the isolation had intensified. In gym class, no one would partner with her, and someone had scrawled troublemaker across her locker. The school principal, Mr. Fenton, called her into his office during last period. "I've received concerning reports about your behavior," he began, without preamble. "Trespassing at the hotel, interfering with a professional sporting event, spreading rumors about respected community members." When Zarya attempted to defend herself, he held up a hand. "This is your only warning. Any further disruption, and you'll face suspension, possibly expulsion." Walking home, Zarya took a circuitous route, constantly checking to ensure she wasn't followed. The weighted sensation between her shoulder blades, the feeling of being watched, had become her constant companion. At home, she found her grandmother in intense conversation with Marcus Reynolds at their kitchen table. Eleonora's expression was torn between lifelong caution and reluctant recognition of necessity. "Show her," she instructed Marcus when Zarya entered. He slid a tablet across the table, displaying news articles about previous endurance challenges. 3 years ago, a Mexican-American cyclist claimed his equipment had been tampered with after a serious crash. He was disqualified for making false accusations to cover poor performance. 2 years ago, a black female competitor experienced brake failure, but managed to avoid serious injury. She later withdrew, citing personal reasons after receiving anonymous threats. Last year, the only Asian American participant suffered food poisoning the night before the race, withdrew before competing. Zarya absorbed this information with growing unease. "All minorities," she observed. "All conveniently eliminated. All denied any official recognition of foul play," Marcus added. "Just like what nearly happened to us, and what did happen to Derek." He turned to another screen. Sophia managed to access Walsh Industries' servers. The tech expert herself appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. "Not easily," she clarified. "Their security is surprisingly sophisticated for a local mining operation. But I found something interesting: plans for a new mining operation that would triple their current output. Requires approval from the tribal council, which has been blocking it for environmental concerns." The same concerns my father documented, Zarya realized, the connections crystallizing in her mind. "But what does that have to do with the race?" "Distraction," Eleonora spoke up. "While everyone focuses on the prestigious event, the county board holds their quarterly meeting. This year, they vote on new water rights allocations that would override tribal council objections." Her knowledge surprised both Zarya and Marcus. "I've lived in this town 73 years, she explained, noting their expressions. "You learn to pay attention to where power flows, even when you're supposedly invisible to those who hold it." A sharp knock at the door silenced further discussion. Sophia quickly closed her laptop as Eleonora answered. Sheriff Tanner stood on the porch, hand resting on his weapon. "Zarya Jackson," he announced formally. "You're wanted for questioning regarding vandalism at Copper Canyon Middle School." "What vandalism?" Zarya asked, genuinely confused. Racial slurs were painted on the gymnasium wall, Tanner replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. Witnesses place you near the scene. That's ridiculous, Marcus interjected, stepping forward. She's been here for the past hour. The sheriff's expression hardened. Stay out of local matters, Reynolds. This doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. Came a new voice from the walkway. A tall black woman in a crisp pantsuit approached, press credentials prominently displayed. Amara Washington, Arizona Tribune. I'd be very interested to know why a minor is being questioned without parental representation, especially when the alleged crime so conveniently discredits her. She smiled thinly at Tanner. I'm currently researching a feature on small-town policing practices. Perhaps you'd like to provide a statement about your department's approach to juvenile suspects. The sheriff's demeanor shifted instantly. Just routine questions, he backpedaled. No formal charges at this time. He retreated to his vehicle, but his parting glance at Zaria contained a clear warning this wasn't over. After he departed, Amara's professional facade softened slightly. Marcus contacted me this morning, she explained to Zaria and Eleonora. I've been investigating environmental racism cases across the Southwest. What's happening here fits a disturbing pattern. She produced a business card. I can help amplify your story, but you need to understand the risks. Walsh has ruined journalists before. Eleonora took the card, her expression grave. The risks began long before any of you arrived, she said. They began when my great-grandfather was forced to mine copper while white men stole our land with paper and pens. They continued when my son and his wife died for discovering the truth. She fixed each of them with a penetrating stare. The question isn't about risk. It's about whether the truth will finally be heard after all these generations. The dusty archives of the Copper Canyon Historical Society occupied the basement of the public library, rarely visited except by the occasional student completing a school assignment. Now, 5 people hunched over yellow documents spread across a worn wooden table. My family has lived in this region since before it was called Arizona, Eleonora explained, carefully turning pages of a fragile ledger. When copper was discovered in 1876, mining companies brought workers from all over, Chinese laborers, freed slaves, Mexican farmers, all desperate for work. My great-grandfather came from Georgia, believing the West offered opportunity. Her finger traced a line of faded script. Instead, they found new forms of bondage. The company store, company housing, company doctors, all designed to keep workers in perpetual debt. When miners complained about conditions, they were replaced. When they fell ill from toxic exposure, they were discarded. She turned to a surveyor's map dated 1901. This shows the original boundaries of tribal lands and black settlements. Compare it to this, she added, revealing a similar map from 1920. Notice how the borders shifted? Each time valuable resources were discovered, legal maneuvers redrew the lines. Marcus studied the documents with growing comprehension. They systematically pushed minority communities onto the least valuable land that later proved perfect for dumping mining waste, Eleonora confirmed grimly. My son Jason, Zaria's father, was trying to prove that this wasn't historical injustice but ongoing practice. Walsh's operations have been deliberately channeling contaminated water toward Eastern District aquifers for decades. Amara photographed each document methodically. We need to connect this historical pattern to current operations. Sophia, what did you find in those server files? The tech expert opened her laptop cautiously. The new mining plan includes what they call a water management system that would direct runoff from the expanded operations. Following the natural topography, that water would flow directly through the aquifer, serving primarily minority neighborhoods. My father documented elevated levels of arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals in our water supply, Zaria added. Levels 3 to 5 times higher than in Western District samples, where most white residents live. Victor, who had accompanied Marcus as the rest of the team prepared for the next race stage, appeared uncomfortable. This is all very concerning, but what's the connection to the race sabotage? Why target us specifically? Walsh sponsors the race, Marcus explained. His company logo is everywhere. It's his showcase event, bringing positive publicity and distinguished visitors who never see the Eastern District. Our team represents everything he opposes: diversity, change, outsiders questioning the status quo. He paused, considering. Plus, there's a personal element. His son died during the race 3 years ago. The official report blamed rider error, but maybe there was more to it. There would have to be, Sophia interjected. To justify this level of vindictiveness, Victor checked his watch nervously. We should get back. The sponsor reception starts in an hour. As they prepared to leave, Eleonora pulled a weathered leather pouch from her bag. These papers establish our family's original land claims, she explained, handing them to Amara. Government surveyors confirmed our boundaries before the mining companies arrived. When compared with current property records, they prove fraud in Walsh's land acquisitions. The journalist accepted them reverently. This could be crucial evidence. I'll safeguard them. Back at the hotel, the atmosphere at the sponsor reception was superficially cordial, but underlaid with tension. Local business owners and race officials offered condolences about Derek's accident, while carefully avoiding any suggestion of foul play. Clayton Walsh himself, a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes, made a point of personally greeting Marcus. "Terrible business with your teammate," he remarked, his handshake firm but briefer than social convention dictated. These technical dissents can be so unpredictable. The threat beneath his sympathetic veneer was unmistakable. "We take every precaution," Marcus replied evenly, "including thoroughly inspecting all equipment before each stage." Walsh's smile didn't reach his eyes. Wise policy. Though sometimes dangers come from unexpected directions, he moved away smoothly to greet other guests. After the reception, as the remaining team members returned to their rooms to prepare for the next day's stage, they found hotel security outside their doors. "Possible break-in," the head of security explained. "Nothing appears to be missing, but your rooms have been searched." Inside Marcus's room, drawers hung open and belongings had been displaced with methodical precision. On his bed lay a single playing card, the Queen of Spades, with a message scrawled across it. "Race traitors die like the rest." The implied threat was clear, but the method of delivery was more disturbing. "Hotel keycards are logged," Sophia pointed out. "Whoever did this had authorized access. And knew exactly when we'd be at the reception," Jamal added. His expression darkened as realization dawned. "Someone on our team." All eyes turned to Victor, who had been unusually quiet throughout the day. "You can't seriously suspect me," he protested, though his indignation seemed practiced rather than genuine. "I've been with the team for months. But your background check was expedited when our previous team member withdrew suddenly," Sophia recalled. "And you've had private calls after every team meeting." "That's my girlfriend," Victor snapped. "Check my phone if you don't believe me." Sophia held out her hand expectantly. After a moment's hesitation, Victor surrendered his device. Within minutes, her expression confirmed their suspicions. "These aren't calls to a girlfriend," she announced. "They're to a number registered to Walsh Industries' security division." In the tense silence that followed, Victor's demeanor transformed. The affable teammate vanished, replaced by calculating assessment. "You have no idea what you're involved in," he said finally. "Walsh doesn't just own this town. He owns judges, politicians, water boards across 3 states. Your little evidence-gathering mission is a joke." "Why, Victor?" Marcus asked quietly. "Money? Or something else?" A flicker of genuine emotion crossed Victor's face. "My sister needs specialized medical treatment. Treatment that costs more than I could earn in 10 years of race winnings." Walsh made an offer. He straightened, regaining composure. "It doesn't matter now. They already know everything about your investigation and everyone involved, especially the girl and her grandmother." He glanced at his watch again, a gesture they now understood had nothing to do with checking the time. In fact, they should be having visitors right about now. Copper Canyon's night air carried a bitter chill as Marcus and his loyal team members raced toward the Eastern District in their rental SUV. Jamal had stayed behind to keep Victor contained, though the traitor seemed unconcerned about his exposure. "You're too late," he had taunted as they left. "Walsh doesn't leave loose ends." The darkened street seemed unnaturally empty, even for a weeknight. When they reached the Jacksons' house, they found the door ajar, interior lights blazing. "Zaria?" Marcus called, entering cautiously. "Eleonora?" The modest living room had been systematically destroyed, furniture overturned, family photos smashed, walls defaced with spray-painted warnings. No one answered their calls. "They were here recently," Sophia observed, touching a kettle on the stove, still warm. In Zaria's bedroom, the destruction was even more thorough. Her school books lay torn and scattered, clothes slashed and strewn across the floor. Only one item remained untouched, a small framed photo of her parents placed precisely in the center of her pillow. "It's a message," Amara said quietly. "What happened to them could happen to her." A soft sound from the backyard alerted them. Marcus approached the window cautiously, then signaled the others. A shadowy figure crouched beside the tool shed. As they moved outside, the figure darted away, but Aiden's athletic training paid off as he quickly overtook and gently restrained the runner Miguel, Zaria's school friend. "They took them," the boy gasped when he recognized Marcus. "Men in black SUVs. I was delivering a message from my father about strange men asking questions at his garage. They grabbed Zaria and Miss Pollery, Eleonora, and put them in separate vehicles. His young face was streaked with tears and dirt. I followed the one with Zaria as far as I could. They headed toward the old mining road. "Did you call the police?" Amara asked gently. Miguel's bitter laugh belied his youth. Sheriff Tanner was with them. With renewed urgency, they returned to the house to formulate a plan. "The old mining complex covers nearly 20 square miles," Sophia explained, pulling up satellite maps on her phone. "Multiple shafts, processing facilities, storage areas most abandoned decades ago when operations moved to the new site. They wouldn't take them to an active facility," Marcus reasoned. "Too many potential witnesses." Miguel pointed to a remote section of the map. "My uncle worked security there before the accident that closed this section. He said there are underground offices and storage areas where executives would meet away from regulatory oversight. The area he indicated lay in a secluded canyon, accessible only by a single service road. "We need help," Aiden insisted. "We're athletes, not rescue specialists." "There's no one to call," Amara reminded him. "Local authorities are complicit, and state police would need warrants, evidence they'd have time to move Zaria and Eleonora or worse." Marcus made a swift decision. "Sophia, get whatever data you've collected to your secure cloud. Amara, prepare everything for publication if we don't return by dawn. Miguel, go home where it's safe, your parents will be worried." He turned to Aiden. "You and I will scout the location. We won't engage, just confirm their presence and report back." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit concrete room deep within the abandoned mining complex, Zaria fought to control her fear. Her grandmother had been taken in a different direction, despite Eleonora's fierce resistance. Now Zaria found herself alone, secured to a metal chair, bolted to the floor. The space resembled an old office, long stripped of anything valuable but still structurally sound. A single bulb cast harsh shadows across water-stained walls. She had no way to measure time, but it felt like hours had passed since their abduction. When the heavy door finally opened, she steeled herself for whatever came next. A man she recognized from town events entered Clayton Walsh, his expensive clothing incongruous in the decaying setting. He studied her with clinical detachment, as if examining an unexpected laboratory result. "Miss Jackson," he began, his tone inappropriately conversational. "I find myself in an unusual position. Typically, children aren't directly involved in my business concerns." He pulled a folding chair from the corner and sat facing her. "But you've demonstrated remarkable determination to interfere in matters beyond your comprehension." "I understand enough," Zaria replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "You're poisoning our water, just like my father proved before you killed him." If she expected shock or denial, Walsh disappointed her. His slight smile acknowledged her statement without confirming it. "Your father was an intelligent man. Like you, he couldn't leave well enough alone. Do you know what would have happened if his research had been published? Hundreds of jobs lost, Property values collapsed, lawsuits that would have bankrupted the company my family built over 3 generations. He leaned closer. Progress requires sacrifice, Miss Jackson. Your Eastern District residents receive subsidized housing, school lunch programs, community health clinics, all funded by Walsh Industries' success. A few elevated contaminant levels seem a reasonable trade-off, don't you think? Zaria's disgust must have shown on her face. Walsh sighed, sitting back. I didn't expect you to understand. Children see the world in simplistic terms: good and evil, right and wrong. Adults recognize the necessity of compromise. He checked his watch. In any case, our conversation is largely academic. The county board votes tomorrow morning on water rights that will secure our expansion plans. By the time anyone investigates your family's unfortunate disappearance, construction will be well underway. The casual mention of their planned fate sent ice through Zaria's veins, but she refused to show fear. People know what you're doing. The cyclists, the journalist, they have evidence. Walsh's smile returned, colder than before. Your friends, the diverse cycling team? They've encountered another unfortunate accident during tonight's training. Very sad. Multiple fatalities, according to the preliminary report. As for Miss Washington, her credibility suffered a devastating blow when fabricated documents were discovered in her possession. Such a shame when journalists resort to creating evidence to support their preconceptions. He stood, straightening his jacket. You should know your grandmother is comfortable. I respect my elders, regardless of their poor judgment in encouraging your activities. As he moved toward the door, Zaria made a final attempt. You can't hide the truth forever. Eventually, people will figure it out. Walsh paused, his hand on the doorknob. Perhaps, but eventually is a long time, Miss Jackson, longer than you need to concern yourself with. After he departed, Zaria fought against rising panic. The restraints on her wrists were professional grade, offering no hope of escape through strength alone. She forced herself to breathe deeply, examining her surroundings more carefully. The chair was bolted down, but decades of moisture had weakened the concrete floor around the anchor points. If she could create enough leverage. In another section of the abandoned complex, a diverse group of people sat in various states of despair and determination. Some wore the traditional clothing of the local tribal community, others the work clothes of environmental activists. All showed signs of rough treatment, some with visible injuries, others with the hollow-eyed look of prolonged captivity. Among them, Eleanor Jackson maintained a dignified posture despite her evident exhaustion. The girl who was just brought in, she asked her fellow prisoners, "Did any of you see where they took her?" A native woman in her 40s nodded toward a corridor. The executive offices. That's where they conduct interrogations. Her tone made clear what interrogations entailed. She's my granddaughter, Eleonora explained, 12 years old. They took her because she warned some cyclists about sabotaged equipment. Murmurs of concern spread through the group. Walsh has escalated, said a middle-aged Latino man with a professor's bearing. First, silencing those who discovered the contamination, then detaining those who opposed the expansion project. But abducting a child crosses a line that even his political connections may not tolerate. If anyone discovers it, added another prisoner bitterly. Some of us have been here for months. No one's looking anymore. Eleonora's expression remained resolute. People are looking, she stated with quiet certainty. People with resources and connections outside Walsh's influence. We just need to stay alive until they find us. As she spoke, her gnarled fingers worked methodically at a loose thread in her sleeve, extracting a small object concealed in the hem, a paperclip, bent and shaped for a very specific purpose. Years of gathering herbs and creating remedies had given Eleonora exceptionally dexterous hands, despite her arthritis. When they separate us for questioning, she whispered to those nearest, "That's our opportunity. Be ready." Outside the complex, Marcus and Aidan lay belly down on a ridge overlooking the main entrance. Through binoculars, they observed the security patrol patterns, 2 armed guards at the entrance, others periodically visible through windows. "At least 8 security personnel that I can see," Marcus whispered. "Probably more inside. The glint of moonlight on metal caught his attention. A row of parked vehicles, including the sheriff's cruiser and 3 black SUVs. "They're definitely here," he confirmed. "But where exactly, and how heavily guarded?" Aiden pointed to a service entrance on the building's far side. "Less visibility there. If we wait for the patrol to pass, we need more information before attempting entry," Marcus cautioned. "Let's work our way around to the ventilation structures. They might give us a view inside." As they carefully repositioned, a vehicle approached the main gate, an expensive sedan that passed through without inspection. "That's Walsh." Aiden recognized the distinctive car. "If he's here personally, something big is happening." They reached the ventilation structure's weathered metal protruding from the hillside above the main building complex. Decades of exposure had created gaps large enough to provide limited views of interior sections. Through one such opening, Marcus glimpsed a shocking sight: a large room containing at least a dozen people, some in Native American dress, others in the field gear of environmental researchers. "It's not just Zaria and Eleonora," he realized aloud. "They've been disappearing people for months, anyone who opposed their plans." His whispered observation was cut short by approaching footsteps. Security personnel, moving with professional precision, were sweeping the perimeter. Discovery seemed inevitable until a distant explosion drew their attention away, a blinding flash, followed by the wail of alarm systems. "What the hell?" Aiden breathed. Marcus pulled him deeper into shadow as guards ran toward the disturbance. Through their hiding place, they heard Walsh's voice, surprisingly close and filled with controlled fury. "Find out what happened, then finish loading the prisoners for transport. The board votes at 9 tomorrow. Nothing can delay that meeting." Another voice responded deferentially. "What about the girl and the old woman?" "They go to the deep shaft," came Walsh's chilling reply. "Make it look like they were exploring and had an accident. Tragic, but not unexpected given their history of trespassing." Marcus and Aiden exchanged horrified glances. Their reconnaissance had just become a rescue mission, with lives measured in minutes rather than hours. Marcus's years of competitive racing had taught him to make split-second decisions under extreme pressure. As security forces converged on the mysterious explosion at the far end of the complex, he signaled Aiden to follow him toward the now minimally guarded service entrance. "That diversion wasn't random," he whispered. "Someone else is here." Using the athleticism honed through thousands of training hours, they moved silently across the rocky terrain, taking advantage of deep shadows cast by the quarter moon. The service door's lock proved surprisingly simple. Marcus suspected it hadn't been updated since the mine's active days. Inside, emergency lighting cast an eerie glow through otherwise darkened corridors. They followed signs toward the administrative section, pausing frequently to avoid the reduced but still present security personnel. "We need to find Zaria first," Marcus decided. According to Walsh, she's headed for this deep shaft, whatever that is. "Old vertical mine shaft," came a whispered voice from a darkened alcove. Both men froze, until Miguel's familiar face emerged from the shadows. The boy's expression was a mixture of terror and determination. "I couldn't just go home," he explained before they could question his presence. "I know this place. My uncle worked security here. The deep shaft is where they used to dump chemical waste before the EPA got involved. It's 800 feet straight down." Marcus suppressed his instinct to send the boy to safety. Miguel's knowledge of the layout could prove crucial. "Do you know where they might be keeping Zaria?" The boy nodded. "Executive offices, lower level. This way." He led them through a maze of corridors, expertly avoiding areas likely to be monitored. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the complex, Sophia and Amara created another strategic distraction. "Thermal sensors show 23 people inside," Sophia reported, studying her tablet. She had repurposed equipment from their cycling team's performance monitoring systems to create a crude but functional scanning device. 11 in what appears to be a holding area, 2 in isolated rooms, the rest moving throughout the facility. Amara checked her satellite phone. "My editor has the preliminary story and evidence. If we don't check in by 5 a.m., it goes live nationwide regardless of what happens to us." She adjusted the makeshift incendiary device they'd constructed from materials in their vehicle, a simple combination of gasoline, fertilizer from a roadside stall, and electronic components from their bikes. This should draw more of them away from the prisoners. Ready? With synchronized precision, they positioned the device near an outbuilding, obviously used for vehicle maintenance, set the timer, and retreated to a safe distance. The resulting explosion was more spectacular than anticipated, sending flames shooting skyward and triggering multiple alarm systems. That got their attention, Amara observed as additional security personnel rushed toward the blaze. Now let's find the holding area. Using Sophia's thermal imaging as a guide, they approached from the building's blind side, discovering an emergency exit that security had neglected in their rush to address the more obvious threat. Inside, they followed the concentration of heat signatures until they located the makeshift prison, a converted storage facility guarded by a single armed man. While Sophia created a distraction with cycling equipment thrown from another corridor, Amara approached from behind and efficiently incapacitated the guard with a practice strike to a pressure point. 4 years of self-defense training, she explained, noting Sophia's surprised expression. Investigative journalism in corporate America isn't exactly safe work. Inside the room, they found 11 captives in various states of health. "We're journalists," Amara announced quietly. "We're here to help get you out." The prisoners' responses ranged from disbelief to desperate hope. Among them, Eleanor Jackson stood with quiet dignity. "Where's my granddaughter?" she demanded immediately. "Marcus and Aiden are searching for her," Sophia explained. "We need to get everyone to safety first, then join them." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You go. I'll find Zaria myself." When they tried to dissuade her, the elderly woman revealed a set of security keys she'd managed to obtain during her captivity. "I've been planning this since they brought me in," she stated flatly. "These people need medical attention. Get them out. I know where they've taken my granddaughter." Without waiting for agreement, she moved toward a different exit, her determination brooking no argument. In the executive level, Zaria continued working at her restraints. The concrete around one bolt had crumbled enough to provide movement, and she used this slight flexibility to gradually weaken the adjacent anchor point. Her wrists were raw and bleeding from the effort, but fear for her grandmother provided motivation that overcame the pain. The door opened abruptly, admitting 2 security guards. "Time to go, kid," the larger one announced. "Boss says you're getting a tour of the deep shaft." His companion laughed unpleasantly. "Great views. Once-in-a-lifetime experience." As they unfastened her from the chair only to secure her with handcuffs, Zaria realized this might be her only chance. The moment they pulled her to her feet, she went completely limp, dropping her full weight unexpectedly. The sudden dead weight caused the first guard to lose his grip, and she used the momentary confusion to drive her head upward into the second guard's chin. His pained yelp gave her a second's advantage, enough to duck away and run toward the door. She might have escaped if not for a third guard entering at that precise moment. His reflexive grab caught her arm, spinning her painfully against the doorframe. "Little bitch has spirit," he commented, securing her with professional efficiency. "Walsh wants her alive at the shaft?" "Didn't specify," replied the first guard, rubbing his wrist where she'd broken his grip. "Just said, make it look accidental." They marched her through deserted corridors, the facility strangely understaffed. Alarms continued to sound in distant sections, creating an atmosphere of controlled chaos. Zaria noted every detail, searching for any opportunity. Her chance came unexpectedly when they passed a darkened intersection. A figure lunged from concealment, tackling the lead guard with athletic precision. In the ensuing confusion, she recognized Marcus's voice. "Get down, Zaria!" She dropped instantly as Aiden engaged the second guard. The third reached for his weapon but froze at the feeling of something sharp against his kidney. "That's my granddaughter," Eleanor's voice stated with deadly calm. "Think carefully about your next move." Miguel appeared from the shadows, helping Zaria while the adult secured the guards. "How did you find me?" she asked, emotion finally breaking through her forced composure. "You saved us," Marcus replied simply. "Did you think we'd leave without returning the favor?" Their reunion was cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps. More security, Miguel warned. We need to move. The others? Zaria asked, looking at her grandmother. Safe with the journalist, Eleonora assured her. Let's join them. They navigated the complex's labyrinthine corridors, guided by Miguel's knowledge and Eleonora's surprising familiarity with the layout. I worked here as a cleaning woman 50 years ago, she explained when questioned. Some things don't change much. They had nearly reached the emergency exit when a voice froze them in place. That's far enough. Clayton Walsh stood 20 feet away, flanked by Sheriff Tanner and 2 armed security men. The businessman's composed exterior had cracked, revealing cold fury beneath. I've built this company through 3 generations. I won't let it be destroyed by interference from outsiders and minorities who should know their place. By poisoning children? Kidnapping? Murder? Marcus challenged. How many lives is your profit margin worth? Walsh's expression didn't change. Progress has costs. My father understood that. His father understood that. The prosperity of this entire region comes from making necessary sacrifices. Sacrifices you made sure only affected certain communities, Eleonora noted bitterly. Strange how the contaminated water never reaches the Western District. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably, his expression suggesting internal conflict. Walsh noticed. Do your job, Tanner, he snapped. These people are trespassing on private property and interfering with legitimate business operations. Tanner drew his weapon, but his aim wavered. There are children here, Clayton, he said quietly, and kidnapping charges aren't something I can make disappear. Since when do you care about collateral damage? Walsh demanded. Remember who owns your badge and your mortgage. For a tense moment, the sheriff's loyalty hung in the balance. Then, with deliberate care, he redirected his aim toward Walsh. I've overlooked a lot over the years, he admitted. Told myself it was for the greater good of the town, but there are lines even I won't cross. Walsh's composure shattered entirely. You, pathetic, disloyal. His tirade ended abruptly as he reached inside his jacket. The security men, misreading their employer's intent as a threat, tackled him to the ground. In the confusion, Marcus and the others seized their opportunity to escape, making their way to the emergency exit where Sophia and Amara waited with vehicles to transport the freed prisoners. As they drove away from the complex, Zaria looked back at the place that had nearly become her tomb. Dawn light now illuminated the weathered structures, stripping away their nighttime menace. Sheriff Tanner would later claim he had been investigating Walsh's operation for months, positioning himself as a hero rather than a reluctant convert. Few believed him, but his cooperation proved invaluable in the subsequent investigation. For Zaria, the night's events marked both an ending and a beginning, the end of a conspiracy that had claimed her parents' lives, and the beginning of a long process of justice and healing for her community. But as Marcus had discovered in the most challenging races of his career, reaching the finish line didn't always guarantee victory. The most difficult part sometimes came afterward, when the adrenaline faded and the real work began. The morning sun illuminated the Copper Canyon County Courthouse, its sandstone facade gleaming as if to deny the darkness that had transpired hours earlier. Inside, the county board meeting proceeded with superficial normality, though whispers circulated about unusual police activity at the old mining complex. Marcus, still wearing the previous day's dust-stained clothes, slipped into a seat at the back of the chamber. The agenda called for discussion of water rights allocations, a seemingly mundane administrative matter that now revealed itself as the linchpin of Walsh's entire strategy. Without these expanded rights, his new mining operation couldn't proceed, regardless of other regulatory approvals. Board Chairman Philip Atwood called for the Walsh Industries presentation, appearing confused when no representative approached the podium. After an awkward silence, Sheriff Tanner entered the chamber, his uniform immaculate, but his expression troubled. He requested a private conference with the board and county attorney. When the meeting resumed 30 minutes later, Atwood announced a postponement of the water rights vote pending investigation of certain allegations regarding public safety concerns. The carefully neutral phrasing couldn't disguise the bombshell effect on attendees. Marcus slipped out before being recognized, returning to the Eastern District where Amara had established a temporary operations center in a church community room. There, the rescued prisoners received medical attention and gave statements to state police investigators who had arrived at Amara's editor's insistence. Tribal council representatives interviewed their missing members, documenting accounts of abduction and detention. Sophia worked tirelessly, organizing the substantial digital evidence they'd collected. Walsh's server contained everything, she reported, barely looking up from her laptop. Not just the contamination data and expansion plans, but records of payoffs to officials, fraudulent environmental impact statements, even communications about resolving problems with specific individuals. She lowered her voice, including instructions regarding Zaria's parents 4 years ago. It wasn't an accident they were deliberately run off the road after refusing a bribe to suppress the water testing results. The knowledge brought no joy to Zaria, who sat quietly with her grandmother, processing all that had occurred. Confirmation of what she'd long suspected about her parents' deaths provided closure, but opened new wounds of grief. Eleonora held her granddaughter's hand, offering silent support as they watched the machinery of justice finally engage with their community's suffering. By afternoon, national news vans had arrived, transforming Copper Canyon from an obscure desert town to the epicenter of a breaking scandal. Preliminary water testing ordered by state environmental officials confirmed dangerous contamination levels in Eastern District wells. County Emergency Management declared a water safety emergency, distributing bottled water to affected neighborhoods that had been drinking poison for generations. The Velocity 6 team, reunited with Derek, who had been released from the hospital, held an impromptu press conference outside their hotel. "We came here to compete in a race," Marcus explained to assembled reporters. "Instead, we found ourselves in a different kind of contest, one with much higher stakes than any sporting event. This isn't about cycling anymore. It's about justice for communities that have been systematically poisoned while authorities look the other way." When questioned about their withdrawal from the endurance challenge, the team's response was unequivocal. "Some things matter more than trophies," Derek stated, his arm still in a sling, "like standing against environmental racism and corporate corruption." Their sponsors, initially alarmed by the controversy, quickly repositioned themselves as champions of the team's ethical stance. Corporate social responsibility teams worked overtime to craft statements, emphasizing commitments to environmental justice. Victor remained in custody, facing charges of attempted murder for his role in tampering with Derek's water. His cooperation with authorities, motivated by a plea agreement, provided additional evidence against Walsh and his associates. That evening, as the town grappled with these revelations, a private conversation took place in the Jacksons' partially restored living room. "Walsh has been arrested," Amara informed them, along with his security chief and several company executives. "But his legal team is already mobilizing. He has connections throughout the state judiciary, political allies in the governor's office, and substantial financial resources. He'll try to make this disappear," Eleonora predicted. "Money has a way of turning crimes into unfortunate misunderstandings, especially when the victims look like us. That's why we need your story," the journalist explained. "Personal testimony that puts human faces to these corporate crimes. Statistics about contamination levels don't change hearts or votes. Stories do." Zaria, who had remained largely silent, finally spoke. "Will it bring my parents back?" The room fell quiet. "No," Marcus admitted. "Nothing can do that. But it might prevent other families from experiencing the same loss." Sheriff Tanner's unexpected arrival interrupted their discussion. Neighbors watched warily as his cruiser parked outside the Jackson home. He entered alone, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Miss Jackson," he addressed Eleonora formally, "I came to return these." He placed a folder on the coffee table, her property records that had been confiscated during their abduction. "And to inform you that state investigators have reopened the case of your son and daughter-in-law's accident." His gaze shifted to Zaria. "It won't change what happened, but those responsible will face justice." His awkward attempt at reconciliation met with reserved acknowledgement rather than forgiveness. When he departed, Eleonora examined the returned documents carefully. Everything's here, she confirmed, including the original survey maps. Will they be enough to challenge Walsh's land claims? Amara asked. Combined with evidence of environmental crimes? Perhaps? Eleanora's expression reflected decades of cautious hope tempered by experience. But legal battles are expensive, and Walsh's resources far exceed ours. Not anymore, Marcus interjected. My team's foundation is committed to supporting your community's legal fight. And Amara's publication has established a defense fund that's already receiving donations from across the country. Outside, neighborhood children had gathered to watch the continuing media presence, their curiosity overcoming initial wariness. Miguel approached with several friends, bearing food prepared by their mothers, a practical expression of solidarity, more meaningful than words. As the evening deepened, the Eastern District demonstrated another form of resistance, one Walsh had never anticipated. Impromptu gatherings formed on porches and street corners, residents sharing stories long suppressed about mysterious illnesses, contaminated gardens, officials who dismissed their concerns. Community elders spoke of historical injustices, connecting past struggles to present challenges. These conversations, witnessed by journalists and live-streamed by younger residents, transformed isolated suffering into collective testimony. Walsh had maintained power partly through isolation, ensuring victims never recognized their shared experience. Now, that isolation was breaking down. Zaria observed this transformation with growing awareness of her place within it. Her actions had helped catalyze a movement larger than herself, fulfilling her parents' unfinished work in ways she couldn't have imagined days earlier. As she fell asleep that night, for the first time since her parents' death, the weight of their absence felt marginally lighter, balanced by the knowledge that their fight continued through her. 6 months transformed Copper Canyon beyond recognition. Spring brought unusual rainfall, turning the desert landscape temporarily lush with wildflowers. Nature's renewal paralleled human developments as the consequences of Walsh's exposed crimes continued to unfold. The old mining complex, now an active crime scene and environmental remediation site, stood surrounded by monitoring equipment and hazard warnings. Federal investigators had expanded their inquiry beyond the initial kidnapping charges, uncovering decades of environmental violations, tax fraud, and civil rights abuses. Clayton Walsh remained in detention despite his legal team's efforts, his empire crumbling as investigations revealed its foundation of corruption. County commissioners had unanimously revoked Walsh Industries' permits after public pressure made supporting the company political suicide. The new water allocation plan, developed with tribal council input, prioritized residential needs over industrial expansion. Eastern District residents received comprehensive medical screening, revealing elevated rates of conditions linked to heavy metal exposure. A class action lawsuit against Walsh Industries secured a preliminary settlement, establishing a health monitoring fund and remediation requirements. Most significantly, ownership of 3,000 acres of disputed land returned to its original holders after historical survey maps provided by Eleanora proved deliberate manipulation of property records. Though symbolic rather than financially valuable, this victory represented recognition of historical injustice that many community elders had never expected to witness. On a warm Saturday morning, an unusual gathering assembled at the newly established community center built with settlement funds. Tribal elders performed a blessing ceremony, followed by speeches from local leaders and former prisoners from Walsh's makeshift detention facility. Amara Washington, whose investigative series had won national journalistic awards, returned to document the community's progress. Her reporting had sparked similar investigations in other communities affected by environmental racism, creating a movement that transcended Copper Canyon's specific circumstances. The Velocity 6 racing team, having suffered career setbacks but gained moral purpose, arrived to celebrate the opening of a youth cycling program. Marcus Reynolds, who had sacrificed sponsorships and competitive standings to prioritize justice over racing, appeared genuinely happier despite these professional losses. Sometimes you discover your true race isn't the one you've been training for, he explained to assembled children from Eastern District schools. The most important finish lines aren't marked with banners, but with the knowledge that you've stood for something that matters. The program would provide equipment, training, and mentorship to young people previously excluded from a sport requiring expensive gear and connections. First among the program's participants was Zaria Jackson, whose natural athleticism had surprised even herself during preliminary training sessions. Her grandmother watched with quiet pride as Zaria demonstrated proper technique to younger children, her confidence growing with each successful instruction. "She's finding her way forward," Eleanor observed to Marcus, carrying her parents' commitment to justice while discovering her own path. "She'll make them proud," Marcus agreed. "She already has." Sheriff Tanner's arrival created momentary tension. Though he had eventually sided against Walsh, many residents remembered his years of enforcing discriminatory policies. He had announced his resignation effective after the transition to his elected replacement, a young deputy who had grown up in the Eastern District and promised community-oriented policing reforms. "Just wanted to deliver this personally," he told Eleonora, handing her an official envelope. Inside was notification that the investigation into Jason and Lydia Jackson's deaths had been officially reclassified as homicide. 3 former Walsh security employees had confessed to staging the accident on direct orders from Walsh himself. "It won't bring them back," Tanner acknowledged, echoing words spoken months earlier. "But it puts truth in the official record. Their deaths weren't random or accidental. They died because they stood for what was right." As the celebration continued, Zaria found a moment alone with Miguel, whose friendship had deepened through their shared experiences. "My uncle got a job with the remediation team," he told her excitedly. "Says they'll be working for years to clean up the groundwater. Good, steady work with benefits." Such practical improvements in community circumstances ultimately meant more than symbolic victories or public apologies. Jobs, health care, educational opportunities, these tangible changes represented justice in its most meaningful form. The afternoon's highlight came when Zaria led community members and visitors to a newly established memorial garden where native plants surrounded a simple stone marker. Dedicated to those who fought for environmental justice in Copper Canyon, read the inscription, and to all who continue their work. Each family affected by contamination had contributed plants or decorative elements, creating a collective monument to resilience rather than victimhood. As sunset approached, casting long shadows across the transformed community, Zaria found herself standing beside her grandmother at the edge of the gathering. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked, watching children play on equipment that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. "Walsh still has powerful friends. Some of the company executives received only fines." Eleonora considered the question with the wisdom of her 73 years. "Justice isn't a destination you reach once and celebrate," she replied. "It's a path you walk every day, sometimes advancing, sometimes defending against those who would push you backward. What matters is that we walk together now, not alone as before." She gestured toward the diverse gathering, diverse not just in ethnicity, but in age, socioeconomic background, and life experience. That's the victory they didn't expect. They thought silencing a few voices would be enough. They never imagined we would find our collective voice. Their conversation paused as Marcus approached, accompanied by a middle-aged white woman whose hesitant demeanor suggested uncertainty about her welcome. "Mrs. Jackson, Zaria," he introduced. "This is Catherine Walsh, Clayton's former daughter-in-law." Surprise rendered them momentarily speechless. "I wanted to meet you," Catherine explained quickly. "To apologize, though I know words aren't enough." Her hands twisted nervously. "After my son's accident during the race 3 years ago, Clayton told me Richard had died. I've been in mourning all this time." She swallowed hard. When the investigation revealed Richard was actually alive, being kept sedated in a private medical facility because his blood tests showed evidence of the contamination, he was too afraid to tell me. The revelation stunned them. "Your son is alive?" Zaria asked. Catherine nodded, tears forming. "Recovering now. The chemicals affected his neurological function, but doctors believe he'll improve with proper treatment. He asked to meet you both, when you're ready. He says you're the reason he's free. The evidence you gathered forced them to reveal his existence." This unexpected connection between their stories created a moment of profound recognition. Walsh's crimes had claimed victims across all community boundaries, though some had suffered disproportionately. The work of healing would similarly require participation from unexpected allies. As the community gathering concluded, Amara approached Zaria with professional equipment. "Would you consider recording a brief statement? People across the country have been following your story. Your voice matters." Zaria hesitated, then nodded. Standing before the camera, surrounded by symbols of both historical injustice and present renewal, she spoke with the clarity that had characterized her actions from the beginning. "6 months ago, I warned a team of cyclists that their bikes had been sabotaged. I did it because I couldn't stand by watching people get hurt when I could prevent it. That's the same reason my parents tested our water, why my grandmother preserved our family's history, why people throughout our community refused to be silenced. We all have moments where we must choose between comfortable silence and difficult truth. Those choices define us, not just individually, but as a society." She gestured toward the new community center, the memorial garden, the children playing freely. This transformation didn't happen because powerful people suddenly became generous. It happened because ordinary people became extraordinary in their determination. The work isn't finished. There are other communities facing environmental racism, other corporations prioritizing profit over people's lives. But what happened here proves that change is possible when we stand together against injustice, regardless of who we are or where we come from. As the camera stopped recording, Marcus approached with one last surprise. The youth cycling program received anonymous donations earmarked specifically for promising young riders, he explained, presenting Zaria with professional-grade equipment adjusted to her measurements. "Your first real racing bike. Training starts Monday if you're interested." Her fingers traced the sleek frame, remembering how a different set of bikes had started this entire journey. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. The instrument of potential harm transformed into a tool of empowerment and opportunity. Like Copper Canyon itself, she had emerged from darkness into an unexpected future, carrying her history while refusing to be limited by it. The setting sun cast her lengthening shadow across newly reclaimed land that once again belonged to the community that had always called it home. What did you think about Zaria's journey from a young girl who overheard a dangerous plot to someone who helped bring justice to her entire community? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that made you want to speak up? Please comment below with your thoughts on standing up against injustice, even when it's difficult. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be inspired by Zaria's courage. Thank you for joining us. And remember that positive change often begins with one person brave enough to tell the truth.